I'm on mute.
You are?
Wait, my screen share is on mute.
No,
Whoa, when it's like going into space.
What happened? Oh, because you're looking at your own screen.
How do I like get to my screen where my mute is and stuff?
What do you mean you're mute?
Like my camera and the mute and all that.
This is it right here.
Okay, so I'm not. Okay,
now you're
I'm
on mute. Now you're not on mute.
Camera to be
now
on.
you're. Yep, there you
cameras. Go. All right, so let's talk about ESG. So this is.
And can you make every screen as large as it possibly can?
Yeah. So let's talk first about the quiz. And this is essentially the latest iteration of the quiz. Should we record this? No.
It's already being recorded.
It's being recorded. All right, good. So
you're patronizing me now.
The quiz.
Your husband's trainings.
Are you looking at my screen?
Yes, I am.
On your computer? Okay, cool.
This is how you pair. This is a great way to interact with people.
All right. So the quiz is based on essentially feedback that we got on previous iterations of the quiz. There was kind of a flat quiz that Lukash had put together at NEO that was like, I want my portfolio to emphasize, and then there were like 50 options.
Can you command plus a few times?
Command plus.
It's not getting larger. Or wherever your zoom is.
I just go like that. And maybe even like that.
As if there's probably some view where it takes up the entire size of the screen because there's a lot of real estate missing.
But I think that's good because then you won't be able to see the bottom part.
The bottom part?
You know what I mean? Like the page.
Oh, we that's good. We want to focus in as much as we can. Can we tick it up one, please?
All right.
For the kids.
For the kids.
Yes.
It's my next option is 200%.
There you go. That's perfect.
All right, there you go. So the first iteration of the quiz the NEO worked on was sort of flat, one question with like 50 options of like, check these things you want your portfolio to emphasize. We got some feedback based on that, various things, and some of it was make it less politicized or make it more apolitical. Some of it was, I'm not even sure. I think it was a little overwhelming probably to look at that many questions at once. So I developed this quiz after sort of reading through all of the MSCI data methodology and trying to sort of incorporate that, and then some of the CSR stuff as well, and looking through sort of what's available to us in terms of key issue information and what we can get, and try to tie this a lot more to the data, and then pose questions that were a little more tied to investments and how we might actually be investing people's money. So I want to invest in companies that perform well in the following categories. That's going to be sort of a major category for a lot of the way we're rating things, a lot of the way MSCI looks at things is sort of who are the best in class, who are the companies that are doing the best in their industry. Generally, you're looking at an industry by industry basis in terms of the ratings. So in these categories, we're going to be able to sort of put people in sort of, I'm not sure how it's going to work out. Maybe it's the top quartile, maybe it's just the top performers, but that are going to fit into each of these first categories in the first question. The second question is going to be sort of more avoidance. So you want to avoid specific industries. Something we hear a lot about with socially responsible investing and whatnot these days is carbon divestment. Divestment. So like all the universities are divesting their money from carbon. So that's sort of the first one. You don't want to avoid the coal, oil, and gas industries. Second is, sort of the sin industries, and that's sort of the earliest part of the.
So why wouldn't we call it carbon divestment?
Why don't we?
Yeah.
Because I want to avoid investments in companies in the following categories. I think what we would do
You
is put
wanna
it in the
avoid?
because that's the sort of this category. People are checking off things they want to avoid here. And we're
Okay,
generally not doing a lot of avoidance, but like there's a few things that people just may want to avoid.
So why don't we call that section carbon divestment?
It's not just carbon divestment, it's gambling, it's alcohol, tobacco,
I see.
adult entertainment industry.
I see.
It may
That's
be
just an instance of
weapons. That's just one of the issues. And I gotta go into the other stuff.
Okay.
Then I want to minimize my exposure to companies with, so that's we're not going to avoid an industry altogether. Like human rights violations is not an industry specific thing that you can avoid, but we have information and data that shows that certain companies do better or worse on these issues.
Okay.
And we can sort of eliminate from the portfolio the poor performers on the issues here. Then I want to invest in opportunities, and that's something we'll get into in the presentation, but sort of everything is sort of phrased in terms of risks or opportunities. And there are certain things where there are just opportunities for in certain like key issues related to the ESG. So like clean energy, certain technologies, nutrition, healthier products, some of the companies that are serving underserved markets, that kind of thing. So you want to invest in that stuff. So that's essentially what the quiz should look like in a prettier form that would be graphically designed and whatever else, and that would be part of the onboarding processes.
Okay. So there was, it seemed like there was a lot more going on. You got like the scroll bar looked like you were maybe like.
So yeah, so I'm going down.
A quarter down.
So then this, and this may be actually a little more information that we need to tie in, but what I tried to do is we have data available from MSCI, right?
Yeah.
And this is hard because I'm not, in the presentation I'll go into a little more detail here, but it's on specific key issues and specific factors that the companies are rated on. And what I try to do is say, okay, pull this data to go into this consumer health, wellness, and safety. So we're going to have, what we have to do is create our own product that is pulling the data and this, and maybe some different data points to then make up this specific issue. So like, if you're saying I want to invest in companies that perform well in consumer health, wellness, and safety, then you're gonna, these are some of the data points we might be looking at to come up with that score.
Okay.
And I started doing that for different things, but I think that's gonna be sort of the big sort of endeavor, I think, between I think it's something I can work on, but it's also very sort of IT intensive, I think, and sort of where the data sources we're pulling from are.
Of course.
But so these are the key issues in MSCI. And what I'm going to do right now, not that, is go to the presentation I have to sort of explain a little more about what those issues are. So let's go here. Mindful investing. So what we're talking about here, and obviously Censible is naming these things here. Mindful investing. And and what it is essentially how we are rating companies on their performance related to environmental, social, corporate governance factors. And our two data sources are MSCI and CSR Hub. And that information is based on corporate documents. There's a lot of like self-reporting. There's government data, journals, news media, organizations that are evaluating companies for how they perform on these things, and professionals. So the disclosures and reportings, as I mentioned, that's self-reporting from companies. So, and that's becoming more and more prevalent, although there is a degree of fatigue in corporate America. There's a degree of fatigue in corporate America on reporting, because they are pretty involved processes to report on this essentially ESG data, so environmental, social, and corporate and governance data. But there are some standards in place that in specific entities that facilitate this reporting. The Global Reporting Initiative is a big one, and that's sort of a system that establishes a lot of the disclosures and whatnot that would go into these sustainability reports. And so it's sort of a standardized process, and there are standardized disclosures. And companies that we use, like CSR Hub and MSCI, then take that information and those disclosures and turn it into ratings of the companies, but in combination with a lot of other data. The Carbon Disclosure Project is something similar, where companies are just disclosing information directly to CDP related to their carbon footprint. SASB is another one, and that's something that Bloomberg's really gotten behind, and that there's a push to make that sort of a required reporting under the SEC. But it's there are some reports.
That's where I've heard that one before, because I keep hearing about that phrase, but I forget that I worked with Bloomberg, so that's definitely where I was like, where did I find out about SASB from?
Yeah, they're really big on SASB. Their electronic waste is going to be a big part of it, because they create a lot of electronic waste. So that specific key issue would be material, and would probably be something that sort of that question would be aimed at. Conversely, which ESG issues affecting an industry may turn into opportunities for companies in the medium to long term? So that's looking at where companies are forward thinking and seeing that there's maybe an opportunity in a specific issue that may have a positive impact on society. So they may be leading the charge in renewables or whatnot. This is a lot of text on one slide, and is
I can't see your screen anymore.
You can?
No, because the internet went out for a hot second, and then when it brought us both back on, you have to share your screen again.
So I need to share my screen again.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Escape. Here we go. Here's the screen share. Entire screen. Share. Okay. Screen sharing.
I see now.
All right. So here are definitions, and the definitions. This I just threw in here. This is like something that people can go back and look at. But sort of when you're looking at data, when you're looking at the MSCI information, going through it, these are some terms to sort of understand and think about, and that come up in some of the ratings. Oh, and why is it going to be fun?
You'll see. Just as you go through, you're naming things properly. So that's a very good thing, actually.
Okay.
Yes, that's a very good thing.
So,
which means that, remember how you went in and edited the marketing page? And it was fairly easy. It seemed like, there was a definition of what that thing was, and then there was just text that you just write, right? You're using the proper terminology because, so for instance, in HTML, there's this tag or this element called definition list. And what do you know? It's a definition list that expects to have, it's very good for if you have a word definition association.
Yes.
Or even something like, say, a recipe list. So if you had a recipe, you say 3 eggs, and then the term for, or the actual definition, or the word would be the 3 eggs, and then the definition would be what you're going to do with those 3 eggs.
Okay.
Within the recipe. And it's actually called the definition list. That's why I was looking at this, and I was like, this is perfect, because so I look at a screen like this, and already in my head, it's just way too much information. I'm just looking at it, and my eyes are sort of glazing over it as opposed to really taking it in. And that could be in the fact that you're presenting it as well, in lieu of time. So the best thing that I'm thinking can happen here is you have some document that you created this in. This should easily be able to be converted over into, say, some markup, 5 minutes, or I'd say maybe 20 minutes of your life to learning what a definition list is. And that can actually be put on the page, like, so that you can say, hey, Lizzie, style listing, I mean, this thing look good. And like, that is, you're really taking with the work that you've done and just putting it on site. And
I don't think this is for the website. This is
really?
More for the purpose of this, and where this is going to be helpful is when we're trying to build out sort of the quiz and sort of make these connections and figure out how to build our own product that ties sort of people's values to the information we have about companies they may want to invest in.
Right.
And these definitions are going to help us read that data and read what we're getting from MSCI.
So this is an internal thing?
Yeah.
So this is an internal thing?
Yeah.
Okay, so that basically what you're saying is this is some sort of ontology that we should know as a little mini dictionary.
Yes, it's a mini dictionary that the Censible staff and everyone working for Censible and working on this should probably have a basic understanding of these terms.
Above and beyond all things, that's the first thing that should be done. Like quiz on the website, that's all cool, but that's the very first thing that should be done and should be announced organization-wide.
So learn these terms, because these terms are actually going to be important for, and it's not, maybe not everyone needs to know these as much. I mean, this is because these are the terms that are sort of on the back end,
right,
that are sort of how to help us interpret the MSCI data, essentially.
So this is something that, why aren't we exposing this to, say, our clients or potential clients?
Because this is more formulaic and probably goes into our proprietary formulas, I would say.
Okay, I see. Total crystal clear.
Yeah. And you'll see later on. So I'm going to go. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit.
That helps me understand a lot, actually.
So if no, yeah. In that document, a couple of the terms were risk exposure score, risk management score. I think they're in there. They should be if they're not. And those are things that this is like a tear sheet. So for Apple, this is their report on electronic waste, and you can see they're giving them these different scores, and so if you're looking at this, these terms are going to help you understand what everything on this page means. But I'm going to go back up and we'll get back to it and you'll understand. So the other definitions, then sort of what we talk about all this stuff, and this is sort of from another source. This isn't MSCI. Where did I get this from? It was the CFA Institute. This was something that I think Momo found. And so we have pillars under ESG stuff. So when all this data and everything we're looking at essentially falls into 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars are environmental, social, and governance. And so you're looking at the externalities or the risks and opportunities related to environmental issues, environmental impacts of the company. And this is, like I said, from the CFA Institute, and this is sort of their definition, sort of what are the things that go into that. So the environmental area includes, that's going to be carbon emissions, a lot of the climate stuff, But it also ecosystems, hazardous waste, pollution, renewable energy, toxic chemical use. And that's going to be pretty consistent, but this is one interpretation of it. And then you'll see as I move along that MSCI actually has similar but very specific key issues under the category of environment. But this is sort of, so we understand a little bit the pillars here. So that's the environmental pillar. Then you have the social pillar. And this gives you an idea of what goes into that social pillar. So customer satisfaction is a big thing there. Data. So for a lot of companies, if companies are holding a lot of data and information on people, how they're handling that data may be an ESG issue if they're not equipped to really protect people's personal information well. That could go against them on their under the general pillar of social, but on their data, how they're dealing with data and handling people, protecting people's privacy.
Why does it say question 4 of 100 explanations?
This was a quiz that I pulled it from CFA Institute.
Oh, okay. So this is a copy pasta of some ordinal questions, and that was the one that was interesting.
So this was an explanation of the question, and I pulled it out. I pulled the three pillars out just to give us a sense of the 3 pillars.
Understood.
And what those mean.
So there seems to be a.
Do you want me to go back?
Yes, please. That PRI principles is that like the footnotes where it says PRI principles for responsible investment?
So that is, so I mentioned the UN does some work on this, and actually Norway is actually, if you're talking about sort of at that level, but not quite at the UN level, but the Norway is also very good.
Reference actually.
But yeah, the UN has a lot of
or publication
research. It's a publication that they put out, Principles for Responsible Investment. They have this PRI. I'm trying to recall the exact details, but it's a consortium of investors, and you actually, it's a very involved process just to answer the questions to be a part of it. And that involves it's an ESG, socially responsible investing, and it's a way for sort of a certification or a qualification for investors that they're qualified in this arena.
Okay.
I'm not sure, I think that might be one of the areas where there's some fatigue, but who knows. So that's the resource for that. This is governance. I find governance to be one of the more confounding issues.
So social governance,
social, corporate, and governance, and social, environmental, and governance. Environmental, social, and governance. Environmental is the first one. It's ESG. Governance is
okay. Got it.
It goes more to sort of how the company runs itself, and if there are questionable practices in place, or if they seem to be doing things in a really legitimate way. And to some degree, like there are certain flags that get sort of raised
so it's like
under the governance arena. No, it's not regulatory. But it's the way. All of these things are how companies are rated. How MSCI is rating companies, or how CSR Hub is rating companies on these categories. So we're saying we're going to invest according to your values. This is sort of, if for some reason governance is a value that's important to you, sort of how their board leadership is set up. Do they have some of it maybe, do they have accounting flaws? That may go more, but have they had accounting audits, or have they, do they have questionable practices? How's their CEO's compensations? Is there a golden parachute set up? Is there, are there independent board members? Are the board members qualified to be on the board, or are they just there to get a paycheck, whatever, or because they're connected?
That's true.
So and is there board participation? That it's some of the things to the ownership of the company. So that's sort of the governance category, and honestly, to me, it feels a little less relevant overall to sort of someone's personal values. I feel like it's a little more attenuated from that, but it's part of the overall ratings, and it does, I think, tell a lot about the risk and everything else related to companies and sort of how their practices are, and if they seem, in some cases it goes to ethical practices, that kind of thing too.
So that's environmental, social, and governance.
Are the three pillars.
So what's next?
Yeah.
It seems like that's describing ESG.
So this is a hierarchy of ESG scores. So like MSCI gives us, for example, an ESG overall score. And that score may not be as relevant to us, depending, it could be very relevant, depending on how we sort of formulate this. But it doesn't necessarily consider certain key issues, so if you have the ESG scores, you have the environmental, social, governance pillar score, and you have a pillar score for each of those from 0 to 10. So that's, if we want a really general look, we can look at the pillar score. Then you have key issue scores under that, and the key issue scores are, again, they're like 38 or so key issues, and each of the pillars has the dark blue, and then underneath the key issues. The themes are in dark blue, and then these are key issues.
Okay.
And we can get scores for either of those. So the theme, I would say, is more of sort of like a middle level of differentiation within that pillar.
Right.
And the data that we can get.
Right.
And then the below that, the key issues are sort of the more detailed level. And we're not going to have a score on key issues for every company.
Okay.
It's going to depend on the industry they're in, and then if they have specific activities that make that key issue more material to their business, there may be a key issue rating for them.
Right.
And then the ones in dark, a darker turquoise here, like carbon emissions, water stress, toxic emissions, labor management, health and safety, board pay, ownership, accounting, business ethics, and anti-competitive practices. There are supposed to always be a key issue. There's supposed to always be a key issue score for those key issues, regardless of the industry. However, they may not be given a weight. So there could be a company that would score extremely high on water stress, a weight. So a company scores really high on water stress, and that score may not mean anything because water is not a big impact of the company. There's not a huge benefit or a negative impact, a risk, as we phrase it, that is related to water stress. So while they may score well, and that score may go into our own score of that company, in terms of, like, if someone says, I want companies that perform well related to natural resources and water stress or something like that, then that could be relevant, but that's not going to be relevant to their overall ESG score. So we might pull from that key issue, even though it has a 0% for weight, we still may want the score to mean something to what we put people in.
Got it.
My time's up.
So, how do we feel about what we've just done? Let's see here. Definitely not no stars. Do we feel happy? 1 star. Do we feel excellent? 2 stars. Or do we feel incredible? 3 stars. I'd say for me it's excellent because I don't know ESG a lot more intimately than I did before. But I realize that now I have a lot to learn, so that's why it's not 3.
And you're only halfway through the presentation.
That's good. So that means we need to do another Pomodoro. But this is just a good time to just pause and reflect.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about the past?
How do I feel? I feel like you're understanding what I'm saying, and that it could be very helpful in getting something completed that could be very good.
I see what your objective is. And that's good. So you feel 1 or 2 stars? How do you feel?
Let's say 2 stars.
Okay.
I'm a little wordy maybe.
No, well, you have to get it out of you.
Uh-huh.
Right? And, do iterations on it. What did you learn?
What did I learn?
Yeah.
I have to think about that. Can you answer that first?
Sure, absolutely. Nice. I'll take that volley. What I learned was, correct me where I'm wrong, that I learned that ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. Those are all representations of pillars, and pillars also have key issues. There's multiple of those key issues within each pillar. I don't think key issues span across multiple pillars. I think they're all focused within each of the respective 3 pillars.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are scores that are associated. I'm not sure if it's with pillars or issues. I think it's issues, and I don't know what management scores are. So I'd like to learn what that is. And there seems to be indicators as well. And that raw data bar, I want to stay as far away from that as possible, because that's when it starts getting a little hairy.
Oh, no. We never get there.
So, well, be careful with that N-word.
Maybe never.
Be careful with that N-word.
Yeah.
And so that looks... Yeah, so there seems to be a hierarchy of ESG scores, but in looking at this, I get rid of the top 3 and then get rid of all of the key issues. And to me, it starts at those 3 pillars, and those pillars have a score. Every pillar has a score at minimum. That's what I see a pillar as. It has a type, which is environmental, social, or governance, correct?
Uh-huh.
And it has a score associated with it that falls within the range of 0 to 10.
Okay. And then...
I'm taking baby steps with ESG here, so...
No, that's good to know. And that's what you would find, I think, in FactSet or in MSCI, data. You could find... But...
Well, let's not think of the data. Let's think of the shape of the concepts that we're putting out.
Yeah.
Because if you build that, then you win. If you build just a paint job on what they have, then you lose. FactSet, MSCI, those are all implementation details. Then they should be able to change, and they should not dictate what our stuff does. So we take the information and we mold it to what we conceive as value, and we put that out into the world. And the nomenclature is very important. Being able to call a thing what we internally call that thing, it has to be prevalent throughout everything from development and implementation. And you have one ontology, because mapping words and things like that causes distraction. It puts walls up between people. They call it that, and I call it this thing, and confusion really sets in. So what I mean by is you might have some developer who doesn't sit down and have this conversation with you, and they go off into some cold cave and they eat their bananas, and then 9 months later out pops a baby, but it's the wrong thing, and then you're just I hate talking to those developers.
No, it's that synergy of getting the 2 fields to cross.
Absolutely.
That's where the magic happens.
That is my niche. That is what I do the best.
That's awesome.
All right.
And that's why you're here.
Yeah. So from a little baby step, does that sound like the generic shape of a pillar? It's got a type and it's got a score between 0 and 10, because that's what this diagram is telling me.
It does. And it's funny because I got halfway through my presentation. It's a longer presentation, and pillars were sort of they're just half of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting half of it, because what I did learn thinking about sort of how we set this up overall.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd been thinking more incrementally. I think it's really dividing things into key issues and how that goes into the sort of what people are selecting on a quiz or whatever else.
Uh-huh.
But I think that you can use sort of the general environmental pillar score, a social pillar score, governance score, sort of as an overarching weight, is one of the weights, not necessarily like predominant, but that would go into the formula related to any of the key issues there. So if they are okay on one, but they're overall, have a horrible environmental score, then maybe we want to think twice about putting that someone in who asked for that thing for
I see
an investment in renewable energy or something, or they want some to do being companies that avoid like water stress. That maybe that environmental or that social score or whatever should have some role in the overall weight.
Let me think here. I think we're going to start our next Pomodoro because my questions are answered. Oh, wait. What did you learn?
What did I learn? So I explained part of what I learned, which was that part that I think that the overall overarching pillars should probably go into our issue scores.
What does overarching pillars mean?
We almost need to come up with our own term for the answers on the quiz. So on the ESG quiz, people are going to click things. And key issues is what MSCI calls those things, but we're going to have our own formula leading to these.
Yes. Call it exactly what it is.
These answers.
Call it what. Just like I told Philip, imagine if Censible, it was 1950 right now. Shit, 1850.
Okay.
What would you call it then? Because it's helping someone, and there was definitely investing going on back then. And so what would you call that thing?
What I call the things is sort of what you care about.
There you go. So
what our customers values, customer value.
Yeah. So the value is an interesting thing because it oftentimes is just a blanket that is used. It's really understanding what the value is that's offered. Like whether it's time. Usually it's something related around time, but maybe not all the time. Pillar. See, that was the first time Philip wanted me to come down here because I asked him. I said, "What's a pillar?" And he was just like, Christian just looked at me just like, "I failed you." I think it was in reference to you. Now I understand because he was like, "I failed you. If you don't know what those are, man, so you have to come down to Key Biscayne immediately and figure out."
That's really funny.
Yes, true story too. I think Philip called Christian and said, "We gotta
get some integration in the company going."
So pillar is good enough word for now, but
there's pillar. But I'm not talking about the pillars. The pillars, then you have to realize that's very distinct from what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, so my reason for talking to you about this right now, doing this Pomodoro, is to figure out with you how this information related to our data set, but moreover related to how we can understand and rate companies that goes back to people's personal, I'm trying to think of a different word besides values. I want to say personal values, and what they care about in the world and what they want to see reflected in their investments.
Right. And it could also be value, but it's the fact that now your brain's aware and thinking, well, it doesn't have to just be value.
Yeah.
And because oftentimes when we work on things, some things wind up being repetitive. And it's like you see it, you want to use it. Mm-hmm. We also want to respect the fact that where can we be different? Like what is the 10% that makes us different? Like that's the things that we focus on and shine on. Or else the people can just go to anywhere. They can freaking go to Betterment. You know,
that's the thing. And but
just
but
being
it
100%
but they
honest,
but
right?
Betterment's not providing any SRI, and there's different SRI products, but this gives people a way to really express themselves.
Then that is the point that you put across, and that's the focal point of this. Because if it's not, then you know you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. And you're making this like imprint, and so all right, I have money, and I want to sort of, this is what I care about in the world, and this is what I want to sort of make my mark on, and you can do that in a small part through where you put your money.
There you have it. I like that. So now, what do we want to focus on with this Pomodoro that just started? What do we
wait?
want
I
our
have to
goals
pee
to be?
first.
Okay. See, you know what's funny? That is exactly what you're supposed to do in your free time in your Pomodoro. I like to say, what have you learned? Some people like to go pee. Oh, some people like to go pee. That's what. There you go, P. So which is Pomodoro? Awesome.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna get some water and a little bit of a refill. Do you need anything?
I'm good. Thank you very much for asking.
Can I have a carrot?
Absolutely. That's why I brought it up.
Yeah, water's actually good. I'm gonna get a sweatshirt. Damn. I haven't had I had oranges, and I don't eat a lot of oranges usually. Okay. I had other fresh fruit for a couple of days. I need real food, something that's alive. I had some cooked stuff, cooked peppers and ham.
Okay, so I have a request.
Are you recording it right now?
Yes.
I was just talking about my craving for a carrot.
I know, right? That's eating sensibly.
It's eating sensibly, right? Yeah. And that's one of our values. Not liking the word, but those are one of the issues, one of the answers or personal indicators that people provide us with, right, that they can direct their investments towards.
So I have a request for this problem.
Mm-hmm.
You said you're about halfway through your presentation.
Mm-hmm.
I say that we take the elephant and cut it in half, and what I would like to do is to say that this is halftime, and the second half of this presentation will be our exercise for tomorrow. But in this Pomodoro, I like to have another iteration over exactly what we just did. But like refine it down to like maybe a 5-year-old or a 55-year-old can understand it, because it's a lot of very rich and in-depth information. And from our very first user test, we can go back to it. We will see that people don't like to read and don't like to take a lot of information, and they do love pictures, though.
I know. And I usually give presentations with many more pictures and much less text. This is just one of those things where there's just a lot of detail and a lot of sort of nitty-gritty stuff that people need to learn. And it's more, like I said, it's more of sort of back-end information for how we use and interpret the data that we have.
So there's a couple of holes that I would like to have filled in too as well. And also because my brain works a little better with like iterations.
Yeah, I'll do it. So you want me to go back and do this?
Do a Pomodoro, but I'm gonna
without the PowerPoint or with it?
No, we're gonna go right back to just that one graph right there and just stay on that, because
which graph?
Keep going.
Right here.
Yes.
And this one I haven't explained. I think I could spend a ton of time just explaining this graph.
So that's exactly what this Pomodoro is on.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Because this right here is what I need to know intimately.
All right. Can we do this and this? Because these two kind of go together.
Yes, I do. I did see that. I actually have a question about this slide already.
All right. So can I cover these two?
Yes, correct. And there you go.
All right. So I'm going to start with this one. So each of the companies that we can go into MSCI data and pull information on any company that we want, and of sort of the Martin Investment Management universe of sort of 150 companies or so, we should be able to pull reports on all those companies. And those are generally like 100 so plus minus page reports that include information on a range of topics. So
how are companies represented in this image that I'm staring at?
So this image you're staring at right here talks about how companies are rated, what issues they're rated on. And not all companies are rated on all issues.
I can see that because there's not as many vertically as on each column.
Well, no, it's not. So all companies are rated in all the columns on environmental, social, and governance issues.
So these are just, I see. So these are just filters that a company can be applied to a company.
Exactly. So you're applying this information, these filters essentially so you're saying, okay, I want to know the company score in the environmental area. I want to know how a company does on social issues, and you can get a score for environmental, social, or governance. That pillar, that's at the broadest level, except maybe the overall ESG rating, which is if you're just doing like a socially responsible investing firm and you say, I want an ESG rating. I want only companies that do however well on ESG, then you're just doing like everything together.
Okay.
We're sort of giving people the opportunity to specify the specific issues that are important to them. And based on sort of that unique part of sort of who Censible is, that we're giving people this ability to personalize their portfolios. The specific data on the key issues may be important to us, of particular value to us, because if someone may want to care only about a couple of these issues, and we're going to give them help them invest in companies that really perform well on those issues that are important to them.
Okay, so just only focusing on like the aqua color or the teal colored boxes. two-part question. The first part is, do each one of these filters, for lack of a better term, have a weight associated with it? I'm speculating with that. And the second part is, does that, if that is true, does that have to do with the shade of how deep the color is for the TA?
So, the shade of the different issues here in the aqua color,
Thank you.
the darker aqua are key issues that are reported on across the board.
What does that mean?
So every company in every industry is going to, that has a rating, whatever that goes, is going to have a score on this issue. You'll be able to look up the key issue score for that company in toxic emissions and waste, or in health and safety, or in business ethics. And they may have a weight of 0%, which means that while they do very well in that area, it's really not an important part of their overall impact on society or the environment.
So it's associated with it, but it doesn't quite hold too much weight.
So that no. They could also have a weight for any of those. Any company. So on all these things, like these they call it 8 issues, but it looks like more than that when you're looking at this. Of these issues in the dark turquoise that are rated on across the board, those companies may have a weight of 9. It may be that that's where is one of the most material issues to their company, that's where they're having like sort of the biggest impact on society or the environment or the world. And because that issue is so important to their business, because how they do related to that issue has a lot to do with their bottom line, and if whether they have significant risks or opportunities related to that issue, there may be a very high weight to that issue. And that means because of that higher percentage of weight given to that issue, their overall ESG rating is going to be highly influenced by a higher weight.
Of course, I totally understand that. And ultimately the score, correct?
And there's a score on all of these key issues. So but depending on the industry, except for the ones
I'm talking about the 0 to 10.
And there isn't, but those
score.
Yes, but we have those for the key issues as well.
I do understand that. I saw there was 2 types of scoring. There is one that was a 0 to 10 on the pillar itself, and then there was another one that was based on the scoring. And I think there was also a management. It was broken down into 2 sections where there was a management score and an exposure score.
Yes. So we're looking at another slide now, and this slide goes into sort of the hierarchy of scores. So you have the overall score and scores and weights. And then under sort of the pillars.
Oh, I see, the key issue score, which is also 0 to 10. Is it always 0 to 10?
Yeah. There are letter grades as well.
Oh, that's a big deal. How come it's not represented on this?
Triple C to D, because there are other charts that interpret the letter grades to numbers.
Is that what's way up at top where it says triple A through triple C?
Yes.
Where's the D?
That's it. It's triple A through triple C.
Triple A through triple C.
Yeah. And then so there's exposure. So you go into the key issues, you have exposure scores and management scores as part of the key issue score.
Oh, one other question. It seems like all 3 pillars all share the same AAA through triple C score. That's what this graph or this chart is representing.
All 3 pillars.
So there is ESG letter rating, AAA through triple C, and it seems like that gets distributed.
Part of what I don't know about this, and it's you have reports for all the companies, and that's one way to get the data and information. And then you have data that you can pull in through FactSet or through MSCI. And you have scores and weights and just different data points.
Oh, I see. So this isn't really even just a quiz, like here's a question and here's the multiple choice. Like this is something where someone has to interact exactly with what these pillars are.
Well, we have to interact with that. They should only have to interact with what their answers to the quiz are. But they have
But this is what drives the questions, then, at least, right?
The pillars. So you have the exposure scores, the management scores. Those are just okay. So under each of the key issues, you have key issues that companies are rated on, and then for those key issues, you're looking. There's an exposure score that's going to go into. These are two things that sort of combine to give you the key issue score. Mm-hmm. So if a company has a lot of exposure to a specific issue, so they're in a business segment that has generally, so say it's going back to, sorry if I use the same examples over and over again, but like water stress. Say if water stress is a key issue, and then you go to the business segment and it's agriculture, and water stress is something that industry is rated on because it's an important issue. That industry has a significant impact on water stress.
Right.
And then how they're doing overall in that is going to be important. But so that may go in, that's the business segment. So they're in a business segment that has a lot of exposure to that key issue. Right. Geographic segment. So if we're still following through with the water stress argument, so you're in agriculture and you're in drought-stricken California, and you have the majority of your farms in areas that are affected by severe drought and with water-intensive crops, then you have a geographic risk.
Right.
Co-spec indicators. I actually don't know what that is. So then the flip side of that is a management score. So you may have a lot of risk, and if you have a lot of exposure, your exposure is significant. That's going to sort of be a negative to your key issue score.
Right.
But if you manage that risk really well, you can improve that pretty dramatically.
So I guess what I'm having a difficulty is discerning like that line between this is the stuff that our prospective clients see versus this is the stuff that's sort of our bread and butter on the Censible side. It's I don't know if and maybe I'll get that with more information on how this whole system works.
So
there seems to be like two sort of roles within this information that you're presenting.
Two roles. Well, yeah, it needs to be portrayed to the clients, but it's also we have to develop an internal product.
Correct. And that line right there is something that you understand the most about and have to be clear and explicit about that because you don't want to make any assumptions with that.
With say that
like so there like one slide bit of information, the definitions you showed me. I'm thinking in my head, this is something that you want to show to anyone that's a prospective client, but you let me know that that's more of an internal thing that we need to know, but we wouldn't quite expose that, have that as be information.
The thing is, there is, I think a lot of sort of how this data works and how MSCI works and how we're going to use that is internal. We're not going to tell our clients details about how we use and our formula for sort of using this data to give us.
This is to devise a formula for us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see. I understand. I understand that explains, that answers a lot of questions actually.
Yeah, so so we need to have a formula for our own. We'll have like a marketing strategy around it, right? We'll have our own personification of what this looks like to our customers, but we have to use the MSCI data. We can't like just interpret that, just like give that raw to our customer base. Right. We need to turn it into something unique. And even we don't necessarily want it. We want to be able to incorporate other data sources as well.
Right. So what is it? But still, it doesn't matter the data source. It needs to all have the same verbiage and nomenclature that we use that is for Censible, because that's
why I was having trouble with what to name key issues for Censible. Like, we need our own name for what we call key issues.
Well, that's the things that you seek inspiration for. Like remember when I was running and I met you out, we were out the bike path, going over by the coral reef. That's the type of things you discover when you're doing things like that, right? Like it just pops in your head.
Yeah, maybe you're right. So whatever. So
that's something you want to think about, like when you sort of are in your things.
Sure. So essentially, where we are, going back to sort of the charts here in the hierarchy of ESG scores, we have.
What is the type of question that can be asked of this information? So if I'm looking at a pillar, do I ask questions of it like, hey, what's your score? Or are you within the score of between 4 and 7? Like, what are the types of questions?
So the other thing that the data tells us, I can't go to other
pillar's perspective.
Just from the pillar perspective, yeah, you can look at the score for that pillar. But there are also quartiles, so you can see if a company performs in the top quartile or the bottom quartile or sort of in the middle range for their industry on a specific key issue or pillar or theme. I haven't even gotten into themes yet. Themes are sort of between environmental, social, and governance pillars, and then the 38 or so key issues. So the themes, there's one. There's a document we have from MSCI, or not a document, it's like a tool we have from MSCI where we can sort of get a snapshot of a portfolio. I think it's called Portfolio Snapshot. And it will give us a score a theme score. And that's sort of a second layer of detail that could make a lot of sense in some cases, or we could use for our research.
So let's talk about visual representation here. You see where it says ES at the top, there's a header that says ESG hierarchy effective Q1 2015. Can you go back to the other diagram that we've been looking at?
Yes. Oops.
This says ESG rating methodology.
Yes.
Maybe because I'm left-handed, but it seems like those two labels should be flipped. Like this is I'm clearly staring at a hierarchy on this one.
That's what it is. At the bottom, it says ESG rating methodology. That's the source.
I understand that, but this hierarchy of ESG scores. Can you go back to the other one? Okay. Well, let me. How does that make sense? So the hierarchy of ESG scores, that's almost like sort of the entire model of the system, no matter what the quarter or year, the date year is for. Is that correct? Like, so if you go back to the other image, the other screen, it says hierarchy of ESG scores. It seems to me like that's the entire system. No matter what quarter it is, what year it is.
So this is more this is a more general view of things. This is getting into what the specific things that are being rated
on a per quarter basis.
I'm not certain on the basis to which those ratings may change.
But some interval. Whether
they change at an interval,
or
at least annually.
Okay. Okay. All right. And we're going to want to. Okay, we're going to want to.
And also, actually, this is important. At the bottom here, you'll see there's a summary of changes in effect. So in May, actually, they'll come out. Or last May, MSCI published their 2015 ratings methodology. I would imagine they will publish their 2016 ratings methodology in May. If they do, so there were changes here at the bottom.
Yeah.
For the first quarter of 2015. And those are just sort of, they changed names of some of the specific key issues, that kind of thing. But that's something, if we're tying key issues in MSCI to our own product and how we're rating companies, then we need to make sure that we update anything related to those names if that's necessary.
I see.
Or any other changes that may occur for 2016. So
why is there a variable number in the vertical number of them?
the variable, I don't know what you're saying.
Okay, so variable means it changes.
But what are you talking about?
So there's columns.
Yes.
And it seems like from the aqua ones, there's more in some than there are in others.
So those are just because there are more issues in that.
That's
theme.
it. And
it's related to the theme. So the themes, like I said, are going to come up in the portfolio snapshot. I think when we're looking at what we have available from MSCI, the themes don't seem to be widely sort of a rating that I'm seeing a lot of, but maybe they're there for everything and is something that could end up being helpful for us. But so under that theme, there are a number of different key issues that are relevant and important. So under climate change, carbon emissions is clearly an important issue. So how a company does on carbon emissions generally, how much greenhouse gases are they generating? Energy efficiency, are they updating their buildings to be like LEED certified? Are they taking measures in place so that they have just a lot of efficiencies within how they're running their manufacturing, whatever else?
The $1 million question is so we talked about the aqua and what did you call that color? What color did you call carbon emissions? You said
carbon
aqua.
emissions. Well, that's the darker aqua, but so that's one of the issues that's reported on across the board.
You didn't say aqua. There's another color you used. Oh well. You said aqua for the other colors, but you said a dark something. It wasn't aqua though. Turquoise was the word you used. All right, cool. Carbon emissions. So you mentioned the word theme. Is a theme nothing more than a predetermined collection of issues?
Essentially, yes. I mean, I think if you're ever looking for a definition of any of the pillars or the themes, like you can go to the key issues that fall under that category. And that sort of describes what it is to you.
What are those blue boxes? The
navy blue boxes,
the navy blue boxes.
Those are the themes. The navy blue boxes are the themes.
Oh, I get it.
So
a pillar has multiple themes associated with it.
And under those themes, there are key issues. And we have.
I got it.
All right.
We're crystal clear.
Okay, good.
Crystal clear.
So
I got it. I had the aha moment.
It's constraining staying between two slides for a whole presentation, but
well, we're 2 minutes. We only have 2
we
minutes.
have 2 minutes left, so we're almost there. Yep. So yeah, I don't know. Do you have any other questions on these 2 slides?
So how do those themes relate to when I look at it like visually in this representation?
The themes aren't here. So the themes are not available in the data everywhere.
So this is 2 separate data sets that these things are coming.
No. This is sort of a description of the data set, but the themes, they show up some places in what MSCI reports and they don't, but they just they're not here.
Oh wow.
But themes aren't necessarily reported on, I don't think, in like the tear sheets or the company reports. So you can pull an ESG report on any given company, look up. Some of them don't necessarily have anything. But so you pull an ESG report, it's going to have, well, it will for sure have key issue scores on the key issues that all the companies have a score reported on. There's several key issues, and then based on its industry, it will have key issue scores on those other things, and it's going to have a very detailed description. And other parts of the slideshow, there are slides showing that. So I guess for another Pomodoro, we can talk about those specific reports, although I don't know that those reports are anything that anyone else in the company really needs to worry about reading at this point. But maybe it could be interesting. It could be very relevant, and it could be something we want to review. Those reports could be something we want to actually do review of on any of the companies that are sort of within the MIM portfolio in which we could be investing in, because the data is going to give us so much information, but there's a lot more detail that's in the reports. It goes to specific incidences, controversies, litigation, problems that companies may have had related to any of these key issues, and just sort of offer a whole new perspective on those things.
Well, so one last question I have is, so say you have a coin, right? And you have the hierarchy of ESG scores on one side, and you have go to the other image, please. And you have the hierarchy effective Q1 2015, the ratings model hierarchy with the themes. And you flip that coin. Which one is the one, if you had to just pick one, right? Which one is the most important one? And
the theme or what?
Well, this one or the other graph.
This is by far the most important graph.
Got it. So you didn't have to. Which one?
The one we're staring at right now? Yes, the one we're staring at right now with the key issues, the themes and the key issues. But each of the specific key issues is critical for sort of how we help people invest in things that are important to them.
Okay. So that's good. You picked that one out. Good. I actually was hoping you'd say that one actually.
Okay.
ESG IVA rating. What's that?
I don't know what IVA stands for, but every company, I think that's as far as I know, that's the score that every company gets on just their overall ESG rating. So we put everything together and we weigh things based on the materiality and the overall exposure and how they're managing these things. And based on each of their scores, environmental, social, and governance, and that really fold up all these key issues, we're giving them an overall score on their performance related to ESG issues. And that's what that rating is.
I see. So let's see here. So that's a Pomodoro.
All right.
And I feel incroyable for this one. That's 3 stars for me. How do you feel?
I feel 2 stars in that I'm not used to giving us a presentation on 2 slides. I mean, it's getting into a different level. It's just a different level of detail or discussion than I was used to.
Well, because out of all of them, I saw that this was like, if there's any meat in the whole entire meal, like that's it right there.
It really is. This right here. This slide is the media slide, and this is what everyone should have sort of pinned up on a bulletin board next to their desk.
Fair enough. Those themes, how often do those themes change?
Change? They don't change.
What do you mean they don't change? They're always just what I'm staring at right there. Like that's it forever.
Well, they may update their methodology next year and maybe tweak the names a little bit, or change, but the themes
or add or remove issues or something like that.
Yeah, but they don't. It's not. If you look at like the summary of changes in effect for 2015, there's nothing really significant. It's just sort of, oh, this is a more accurate description or whatever else.
Okay, so 2 stars, and we'll take a break. So there's that.
All right. Do you see that what'd you learn thing now?
Yeah, sure. Why not? That's always good to know because it might shock you. Like, what did I learn? The most important thing I learned was about themes. Like, I got it. I had the aha moment, which was really cool.
Okay.
And that explains a lot about that. That is the one piece of information that helped me understand this entire slide.
Did you understand key issues?
Do I understand key issues? I understand the fact that a theme can have issues, but they have them, but they don't really hold much weight. And then they also can have a key issue that holds hella weight, like carbon emissions.
That's important. But the other part is, for us, it may not be. The weight may not always be relevant. Is we're putting together our quiz. If someone wants companies that perform well, or whatever they want to avoid, or there's some risk. It's more like you want to avoid risk in a certain area.
Some people could care less about the weight. They just care more about the theme.
I don't know about the people. This is our thing. This is not about necessarily what our customers are thinking, but what we're presenting them with, those questions. Some of them, the weight may not be as important. So if they want to avoid companies with a lot of risk for, let's see, for health and safety, a company may score tremendously on that, but they have very little exposure to health and safety risks. So it's not given much weight. They don't have much impact on that issue. That's not important to their bottom line, whatever. But nonetheless, they score very well on that. That score may be very relevant to why we put them in that holding, why they're invested in that company.
I see.
Even if it's not a big part of the weight.
I see.
All right. Owen.
What did you learn?
What did I learn? I learned that there's a lot to talk about in these 2 slides, and that there is a value in sort of getting into detail in a couple of just a couple of issues rather than going through everything at once.
Yeah. Tremendously. I mean, I learned the most from these 2 slides right here. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is they're rich with information. So, and it's something you're passionate about. So you have to be careful to making people drink from the fire hose.
Gotcha.
You never want to assume that somebody's as smart as you are.
I don't know if it's that, but all right.
Well, thanks for your time. That was awesome. What do you think? Pretty good session, huh?
Yeah, awesome. Very good. Good to.
So what's the? Well, I always like to ask